Ladies and gentlemen, bedtime stories. It is a very interesting story. It is a tale of the name of this story is The Hunchback Tale, and I had taken this story from the collection of the Arabian Nights, 1001 Night. The name of this tale is The Hunchback's Tale. Many years ago, in a certain city of China, there lived a tailor, a generous man who loved pleasure and merrymaking. From time to time, he and his wife liked to relax by going to public entertainments. One time, after they had spent the entire day amusing themselves, they were returning home in the evening and encountered a hunchback, whose feature made one forget one's cares and banish despair. Delighted by his looks, they went up to him and invited him to go home with them to converse and carouse. That night, he consented and accompanied them to their home. Whereupon the tailor ran out to the bazaar and brought fried fish, bread, lemons, and dry sweetmeat for dessert. After setting the food before the hunchback, they all sat down to eat. The tailor's wife took a great piece of fish in her hand and stuffed it into the gobo's mouth as a practical joke. By Allah, she said, you must down in a single gulp, and I am not going to give you time to chew it. So he bolted it down, but there was a hard bone that got stuck in his gullet, and apparently his time was up, and he died. When the tailor realized what had happened, he cried out, Alas! Why did this poor wretch have to die in such a foolish fashion at our hands? Stop this idle talk, his wife responded. Let's not waste our time in grief. Well, what should I do with him? Asked the husband. Get up and carry him in your arm with a silk kerchief, spread over his face, then I'll walk ahead of you, and we meet anyone who are to say, this is my son and his mother, and I'm carrying him to the doctor so he can examine him. So he rose, picked up the hunchback in his arms, and carried him through the street, preceded by his wife, who kept crying, Oh, my son, may Allah keep you. Where does it hurt? Where did the smallpox attack you? As a result, the people they encountered all thought that they were carrying a child sick with smallpox. And as the tailor and his wife went along, they asked for a way to a physician's house, and some folk directed them to the house of a doctor who was a Jew. They knocked at the door, and a black slave girl opened it. When she saw that it was a man and his wife bearing a child, she said to them, What's the matter? We have a little one with us, answered the tailor's wife, and we want to show him to the doctor. So take this dinar and give it to your master, and ask him to come down and look at my son who is very sick. While the girl went up to tell her master, the tailor's wife walked into the vestibule and said to her husband, Quick, leave the hunchback here and let us run for our lives. So the tailor carried the dead man to the top of the stair and propped him upright against the wall. Then he and his wife ran as fast as they could. Meanwhile, the girl went up to the Jew and said, "A man and woman are at the door with a sick child, and they have given me a dinar for you to come down and look at the little one, so that you will prescribe something for him." As soon as the Jew saw the dinar, he rejoiced and rose quickly. Since it was dark and he was hurrying, he had hardly reached the handling when he stumbled on the corpse and knocked it over so that it rolled to the bottom of the staircase. Immediately, he called out to the girl to bring a light, and after she arrived, he went down, examining the hunchback, and found that he was stone dead. "Oh, Moses," he cried out, "I've killed the sick person. I must have stumbled against him, and now I'd better get rid of the body as soon as possible." Then he picked up the body, carried it into his house, and told his wife what had happened, whereupon she responded, "Why are you sitting still? If you keep him there until daybreak, we'll both lose our lives. Let's carry him to the terrace roof and throw him over into the house of our neighbor, the Muslim. If the body stays there during the night, the dogs will come from the adjoining terrace and eat him up." Now his neighbor was a steward who was in charge of the Sultan's kitchen, and he was accustomed to bring back large quantities of oil, fat, and meat. But the cats and rats used to eat everything. Or if the dogs smelled a fat sheep's tail, they would come down from the nearest roof and fight over it. So generally speaking, the animals would always damage much of what he brought home. Knowing this, the Jew and his wife carried the hunchback up to their roof, and they let him down by his hands and feet through the wind shaft into the steward's house, where they propped him up against the wall and went their way. No sooner they had done this than the steward who had spent an evening with his friend hearing a recitation of Quran, came home and opened the door. After lighting a candle, he glimpsed the hunchback standing in the corner under the ventilator. When he saw him, he cried out, "By Allah, it's a man who's been stealing the meat and fat. After killing them and fat after all, I had thought it was cats and dogs, and I have been killing them and sinning against them. But all the while it was you who came into my house and through the wind shaft, and now I'll get my revenge with my own hand." So he snatched a heavy hammer, attacked the hunchback, and smashed him on his chest, causing him to fall down. When he examined the hunchback, he found that he was dead, and he cried out in horror, thinking that he had killed him. "By Allah, what am I going to do?" And he feared for his life and said, "May Allah curse the oil, the meat, the fat, and the sheep's tail to boot. Why was I fated to kill this man?" Then he looked at the body, seeing it was that of a gobo. He said, "Wasn't it enough for you to be a hunchback? Why did you also have to be a thief and steal flesh and left his house? Steal flesh and fat." So he picked the hunchback up in his shoulder and left his house. It was now late at night, and he carried him to the nearest end of the bazaar, where he set him up on his feet against the wall of a shop at the head of a dark lane, left him there and went away. After a while, a Christian came walking down the lane. He was the Sultan's broker, who was feeling no pain from the liquor he had drunk and was heading for the hammam bath as his drunkenness whispered in his ear, "It's almost time for vespers." He came staggering along until he came near the hunchback, and just then he had to relieve himself as he got ready to pee. He happened to glance around and saw a man standing against the wall. Now, some person had snatched the Christian turban at the beginning of the night, so when he saw the hunchback nearby, he thought that he too would try to steal his headdress. Thereupon he clenched his fist, rushed over to the hunchback, and struck him on his neck, causing him to fall to the ground. Then he called aloud to the watchman of the bazaar, while throttling the corpse in his drunken fury. Soon the watchman came, the corpse in his drunken fury. Soon the watchman came, and finding a Christian kneeling on a Muslim and beating him, he said, "What harms has this man done to you?" "This fellow wanted to snatch my turban," the broker answered. "Get off him," said the watchman. So he arose, and the watchman went up to the hunchback, and finding him dead, he exclaimed, "By Allah, a Christian killed a Muslim?" Then he seized the broker, and after tying his hand back behind his back, he brought him to the governor's house, while the Christian kept saying to himself, "Oh Jesus, oh Mary, how did I manage to kill this fellow? He must have been in a hurry to leave his life if he died from my simple blows." As the Christian became more sober, he began to suffer from a hangover. So the broker and the body were kept in the governor's house until morning. Then the police chief came and sentenced the Christian to hang. He commanded one of his officers to announce the sentence, while the other began building a gallows under which they made the Christian stand. When the gallows was finished, the hangman threw a rope around his neck, passed one end through the pulley, and was about to hoist him up, when suddenly the steward, who was passing by, saw the Christian about to be hanged. Making his way through the crowd of people, he cried out to the executioner, "Stop, stop! I am the one who killed the hunchback." "What made you kill him?" asked the governor. "When I went home last night," he answered, "I came upon this man who had come down the ventilator to steal my property. So I hit him with a hammer on the breast, and he died right away. Then I picked him up, carried him to the bazaar, and set him up against the wall in a dark lane. It's enough for me to have killed a Muslim without also having a Christian on my conscience. So hang me if you are going to hang anyone." When the governor heard these words, he released the broker and said to the executioner, "Hang this man, since he has confessed." So the hangman loosened the rope from the Christian's neck and threw it around the steward's neck. Then he made him stand under the gallows and was about to string him up when suddenly the Jewish physician pushed his way through the crowd of people and shouted to the executioner, "Stop, stop! It was I and no one else who killed the hunchback. Last night I was sitting at my home when a man and a woman knocked at the door. They were carrying this gobo who was sick, and they gave me my maid a dinar as a fee so that I would come down and look at him. While she went to fetch him on the staircase and went away, soon I came down, and since I couldn't see him in the dark, I knocked him down, and he fell to the foot of the staircase and was dead on the spot. Then he picked him up, my wife and I, and we carried him to the top of our terrace. The house of the steward is next to mine, and we let the body down through the ventilator into his home. When he returned and found the hunchback in his house, he thought it was a thief and struck him with a hammer so that he fell to the ground, and our neighbor was certain that he had slain him. Now it's enough for me to have killed one Muslim unwittingly, without consciously causing the death of another's one. When the governor heard this, he said to the executioner, "Set the steward free and hang the Jew." Accordingly, the hangman took the Jew and slung the cord around the neck of the Jew. Just then, however, a tailor passed his way through the crowd of people and shouted to the executioner, "Stop, stop. It was I and no one else who killed the hunchback. And this is the way it happened. I had been out enjoying myself yesterday, and on my way home for a supper, I encountered this gobo who was drunk and drumming on his tambourine and singing merrily away. So I approached him and brought him to my home. And after I had bought a fish and sat down to eat, soon my wife took some of the fish, rolled it into a ball, and crammed it down his mouth. But some of it went down to the wrong way or got stuck in his gullet, and he died on the spot. Then he lifted him up, my wife and I, and carried him to the Jew's house, where the slave girl came down and opened the door to us. After I said to her, "Tell your master that there is a sick child that I want him to look at," I gave her a dinar, and she went to fetch her master. While she was gone, I carried the hunchback to the head of the staircase and propped him up against the wall. Then my wife and I ran away as fast as we could. Then the Jew came down, and he stumbled over the hunchback and thought that he had killed him. Now, turning to the Jew, he asked, "Isn't this true?" "Yes," the Jew answered. Thereupon the tailor turned to the governor and said, "Let the Jew go and hang me instead." When the governor heard the tailor's tale, he was astonished by this case of hunchback and exclaimed, "Truly, this is an adventure which should be recorded in books." Then he said to the hangman, "Let the Jew go and hang the tailor, since he has confessed." The executioner took the tailor and put the rope around his neck and said, "I'm getting tired of such slow work. First, we bring out this one, then we replace him with another and another. Soon no one will be hanged at all." Now, as it turned out, the hunchback in question was the jester to the Sultan of China, who could not bear to separate from him. So when the fellow got drunk and did not make his appearance that night or by the noon of the next day, the Sultan asked some of his courtiers where he was. "O Lord," they said, "the governor has found him dead and has ordered his murderer to be hanged." But when the executioner was about to hang him, 3 other men came and said that they were responsible for the hunchback's death, and each one gave a full and circumstantial account of how the jester was killed. When the king heard this, he cried aloud to his chamberlain, "Go to the governor and bring me all 4 of those men." So the chamberlain went at once to the place of execution, where he found the executioner on the point of hanging the tailor. And so he shouted to him, "Stop, stop." Then he gave the king's command to the governor, who took the tailor, the Jew, the Christian, and the steward, and brought them to the king. In addition, he had the hunchback's body carried there on some man's shoulder. When the governor stood before the king, he kissed the ground and told the ruler the whole story, which is needless to relate. For as they saw, there is no avail in thrice told tale. Of course, the Sultan was astonished when he heard it. Indeed, he was moved to mirth and ordered that the story be written down in letters of liquid gold. Then he said to all those present, "Have you ever heard of a more wondrous tale than that of my hunchback?" Thereupon the Christian broker came forward and said, "Your Majesty, with your permission, I'll tell you about something that happened to me, for it is more wondrous and delightful than the tale of the hunchback." "Tell us what you have to say," said the king, "and if it is truly more wondrous, I'll pardon all your lives." So he began in these words, and from here the tale of the hunchback was paused, and now the tale of the Christian broker will start. We will come with the next video. Thank you very much. I hope you will enjoy.